I am audible and visible. So if everything is fine, just put a hi in the chat so that I can get going. You can start maybe in the next few seconds once the stream is fine. All right. Yeah, perfect. Okay. So I think everything seems to be fine. I've started to get the comments that are there, the chat that is there. Uh, so yeah, we'll be looking at the ZAT 2025 analysis today. So to start with, I was really lucky to be able to reach the center before time and actually take the test because I reached 10 minutes before the test started, right? And yeah, shout out to the institute. And they made sure that the entire checking process was fine, and I was able to take the test. And I saw a lot of new people, right? I saw a lot of subscribers who were there, a lot of students who were there in my center as well. And I think the general consensus was that the test was on the difficult side. So that did what that is best at, which is setting a difficult test, right? So that is basically what it looked like. I'm traveling currently, so that's why the audio and the video might be slightly shaky, but I hope that's not a problem. Right. Now to tell you what the test looked like, it was pretty similar to what ZAT looked like or has looked like over the last many years now, right? There were three sections as was expected. There were 78 questions as was expected, followed by GK section, which had 20 questions. So everything was pretty familiar in terms of the kind of look and feel of the test and everything. But अगर देखते हैं कि किस टाइप का test था, तो then I would definitely grade it as a difficult test, right? So that over the years, अगर last 4 साल के ZATs देखें, ZAT 21, 22, 23, 24, 21, 22, 23 में progressively ZAT kept on becoming easier, and 23 ZAT was possibly the easiest ZAT in recent times. 24 ZAT was the toughest ZAT in recent times. Today's test was mostly similar to ZAT 24 from the first impressions that I've had and the kind of conversations that I've had with the people who had taken the test as well. I think it was closer to ZAT 24, right? So I don't think it was an easy test at all. And that's why I think that the cutoffs, the scores will be pretty similar to what 2024 ZAT looked like. To give you some context, around 31.5-ish marks was a 98 percentile last year, which I expect to be consistent this year as well. So my expectation is just to put it upfront, कितने attempts होने चाहिए, कितने questions करने चाहिए. So I see a lot of people sharing their attempts. I think that anywhere between 45 to 50 attempts is pretty good in this test if you have an accuracy of around 80% or so. If your attempts are bloated because of a lot of DM and VA questions, then it will be difficult for me to predict what kind of score you're going to get. But the assumption here is that roughly 14, 15-ish attempts in each VARC and the DM section, and another 15, 16 attempts in quad. I think that should be a decent attempt at this test. 45-ish attempts agar hai, you get 80% accuracy, 36 marks you are getting, and then the negatives for uninterrupted questions. Sab agar adjust kar loge, 31.25, 32 marks, I think should be good enough for a 98 percentile. That is my first impression of the test. Coming to the various sections that were there, the first section that I'm going to discuss is, of course, going to be the quant section. The quant section, there were 28 questions this year as expected. And again, the split was very similar to what happened previously as well. There was a bit of quant, so 15-ish quant questions and 13-ish DI questions. It was pretty similar to what happened last year. And agar DI questions देखेंगे specifically, they were, I would not say difficult sets, but they were unconventional sets, right? So there was one set on the gender disparity, income disparity kind of a thing, gender inequality, pay gap kind of a thing. So not very difficult set अगर देखेंगे तो उसमें से एक क्वेश्चन तो काफी स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड था. One question you could have easily managed. The first question that was there, I think in my paper it was the first question. जो काफी स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड था, which among the following had the lowest increase or the lowest change rather. So very straightforward question that you could have done. The other questions were lengthy in terms of the options that were there, and in terms of course, the kind of calculation that you would have to do for those questions as well. So a question में 2005 and 15 का कुछ there was something which said that something here will translate to 5,000 there, 25,000 there, and 60,000 there. Basically कुछ था. So that was again the base one was the one that was slightly uh, a difficult one. And the other question had five options, and all of them needed individual working. So वो थोड़ा lengthy set हो जाता था. So one question from this set could have definitely been attempted. I think the answer was I. People think I. And I think the change was zero, right? So zero upon anything would definitely be anything else. So there was no change basically. So वो था. The other set that I was talking about is in terms of the averages that were given. So ratings and averages for like set tha. Again, that was a manageable set. If you figured out that there was just one condition or there was just one value that would satisfy everything, that I think would be that was something that would have, if it would have struck you, it would have been very easy for you to answer that particular set. So I think एक blank के दो ही values possible थे, 4 or 5, because otherwise 1 to 5 का distribution possible ही नहीं था, and 5 was not possible there. So the only number that was possible was 4, and अगर 4 डाल देते तो then you would be forced to get only one answer. So that way it was a very straightforward set अगर करते थे तो, right? So that was again a manageable set that was there. Another set that was there again was yeah, pretty agree, Aryan. Yes. So these were the two sets that I remember top of my mind. The other set that was there was in terms of again how many possibilities existed was the same set. But if you looked at it, there were no conventional sets, right? So DI ke andar you will not find any bar graph, you will not find any line graph wale basic sets, Venn diagram wale sets, games and tournaments. So all those things that people would have maybe gone for. Those sites were not exactly present in this particular context. तो वो था. There was another set which was more of an LR set, wherein I think there were 8 floors that were there. तो वो एक set था. Again, not 8 floors, 8 tests were there, and you had to figure out what was the value of X and Y. So two variables more or less were there. Again, that was a manageable set अगर करते तो. So DI sets were manageable. They were unconventional, but they were manageable. All right. सो इतना डिफिकल्ट नहीं होना चाहिए था. ठीक है. कट ऑफ कितना होगा यार? कट ऑफ आई एम प्रीटी श्योर इट इज गोइंग टू बी अलोंग द लाइन्स ऑफ 2024. मतलब अनलेस द नंबर ऑफ टेकर्स हैज सिग्निफिकेंटली इंक्रीज्ड और समथिंग हैज गॉन ड्रास्टिकली रॉन्ग, मतलब पीपल हैव ड्रामेटिकली इंक्रीज्ड देयर इंटेलिजेंस और समथिंग. I don't see the cutoffs going beyond 2024. मतलब verbal ability इतना ज़्यादा ambiguous था. I'll come to it a bit later, but that is basically what it looks like. ठीक है. Score of this cutoff I will have an elaborate table that I will post a bit later in the day. So stay tuned for that. That's the one that I will do a bit later. तो वो था. The fourth DI set that I remember is the one on Tyrion Lannister, right? So Game of Thrones, ka jo Winterfell and King's Landing and all. So that was basically the set. It was again a kind of a set disguised as a DI set. वो भी manageable था, not a difficult set if you knew what exactly you were doing. And beyond that, अगर कौन भी देखेंगे ना, the options were beautiful. यार मतलब beautiful क्यों बोल रहा हूँ पता है? Because I'm sure some of you might have experienced use the calculator, you reach the answer, and you see an option that is extremely close to the answer that you have got, right? So that gives you a lot of happiness, right? So कुछ कुछ जगह पे मतलब your this thing sorry. All right, ठीक है. So that is basically where you would have appreciated the kind of options that were there and the kind of solutions that you would have got, right? So कौन के अंदर वो बहुत ज़्यादा हो रहा था. कौन के अंदर there were a few sitters, I would say. एक sitter was the जो होता है ना price of diamond, the value of a diamond varies directly as the square of its weight या जो भी वैसे होता है. तो those that kind of a question, length था, square of its length था. Again, a manageable question that was there. There was one question that was again from geometry, which was perimeter of a square and a circle are the same. तो फिर क्या होगा? 4:pi or something. I think that was the answer. Or pi/4. That was the answer. तो वो एक manageable question था. There was a question, very straightforward question on fractions and ratios. So 1/3 of something was invested somewhere or was paid using UPI. 1/6 was paid using something else, and so on and so forth. तो वो भी एक manageable question था. And then there were quite a few sitters that were present throughout the test. One thing that I vividly remember, there were a lot of questions on algebra, which were not very challenging, but उसके लिए एक algebra का मतलब solid base पता होना चाहिए. So there was a line L1 given, L2 you could find out, and basically you had to figure out the distance from the origin of these lines. So formula पता था, it would have made your life much easier. Y-intercepts, X-intercepts, काफी manageable question था. Again, another question that was there was rectangle का एक side का equation दिया हुआ है, which of the following could be the length or the side AB. or the line on which side AB could have been there. Again, a manageable question, right? So ये questions थे which you could have maybe solved visually, or if you had a good hold on algebra, you would have been able to manage those things very well. In terms of quadratic equations, also एक question था जो काफी mainstream question होता है. A less than 9 less than equal to 9, B less than equal to 9, ax squared plus bx plus a. That's a mainstream question that exists. So people who have maybe prepared for the CAT or the XAT specifically, you would have been able to answer that question as well. So ऐसे काफी सारे questions interspersed थे that you would have been able to answer very easily. There were some questions that were really difficult. One of the difficult ones that I remember was there is a toy जहाँ पे base frustum है and उसके ऊपर एक hemisphere रखा हुआ है and you have to figure out what exactly is the amount or the value of gold that is required to plate it, right? That was one of those beautiful questions wherein the values were super awkward, but when you arrive at the final answer, you will see the option right there in front of you, right? तो वो था 72,500. I don't think Abhijit that was the answer to that one. I think it was 77,500 from what I remember. ऐसे कुछ उसका आंसर था. Uh, so that was basically what we are looking at in this particular context. All right. So that was basically quant. It was lengthy, काफी lengthy था. मतलब I think out of 170 minutes, I'm sure people would have spent around 70 to 80 minutes, right, doing the quant section. And people who are strong at quant, I think you had some advantage here in this particular context. Because the quant section was manageable for people, one, who were good at quant, and two, who had that in them to fight that attritional battle कि मैं मतलब धीरे 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 करते करते जाना है. So that's why I was saying that the quant section was lengthy but manageable, right? I think around 15 to 16 attempts are possible in quant out of 28 questions. तो कर सकते हैं. I don't think it is very difficult to expect 15, 16 questions. People who are like really good at the section would have definitely clocked 20 to 22 attempts. I don't think that is going to be something which would have been which is unheard of, right? ऐसा नहीं होगा. So that is what we're looking at. There was a question on logs. Yes, log का एक question था. Very very easy question on logs. जिसमें everything the log 2 to the base ए पूरा का पूरा cancel हो जाता है from everywhere, and then you are left with two values. I think -3/4 and 2. So two values were the answer. Real numbers था. So I checked it once or twice. Everything seemed to be fine. So I think the answer there was two, right? Data sufficiency के questions थे. I saw two questions जहाँ पे necessary and sufficient वाले conditions थे. One was based on certs, and one more question that was present. That was based on two opposite angles of a quadrilateral are 90 degrees each, and you have to figure out what is basically going to be the area that is there, right? I don't think that would have been you would have been able to answer that particular question, because think about it as a circle जिसके अंदर एक cyclic quadrilateral है. So I don't think it was possible to answer that question, but I might be wrong. तो ये वाला था. Grid वाला question था. There was a nice question on grid 4x4 grid है, and you have to figure out how many numbers can you put without having 4 in a row or 4 in a column. And I think that there should have been one option 11 there, but option 11 नहीं था. 13 was of course the answer. You could leave one blank in each of the diagonal wale squares, and you would not be able to fill any row or column. And the 13th number then would have completed a row or a column. But I would have really liked if one of the options were 11 in that particular question. But ठीक है, चलो. So 13 answer था, I think उसका 13 was right from what I understand. Robot वाले question का answer I think 60 degrees ऊपर था, तो I don't remember the exact thing, but 7 minus root 3 ऐसे कुछ होना चाहिए answer उसका. From what I understand. Akhil percentile likewise 2022 nahi, I think it's 2024, wherein 90 percentile in each section would have been at a score of around 8 to 8.25. That is the benchmark that I'm looking at. And in terms of overall score versus percentile, I think around 32 marks will be 98 percentile. I think around 35-ish will be a 99 percentile, 34.5-ish, 35-ish will be a 99 percentile from what I understand. Okay, that was the quad section. The second section that I'm going to talk about is the DM section. DM section ke andar, I think, yeah, it was moderate. It was fairly manageable. Chauka Bartan, yes, 1,20,000 was right for the UPI question, yes. And yeah, so what was room wale का answer I think was 77,000, 77 or 78,500, so कुछ second option. It was not the lowest one, 72,500 नहीं था, the other one was the answer, 77, 500 ऐसे कुछ तो answer था उसका. ठीक है। नाउ लुकिंग एट द नेक्स्ट वन, इफ आई लुकिंग एट द डीएम, तो डीएम के अंदर काफी सारे केसलेट्स थे दैट वेयर कंटेम्पररी, मतलब लास्ट एक साल में इफ यू वुड हैव पेड अटेंशन टू न्यूज, आई थिंक यू वुड हैव फाउंड इट वेरी इजी टू रिलेट टू दी सेट्स दैट वाज देयर। बट देन अगेन इट डजंट मैटर यार, मतलब अगर न्यूज नहीं भी पढ़ा है और पता भी नहीं है तो भी आई डोंट थिंक इट मैटर्स, राइट? इरेशनल रूट एंड प्रोबेबिलिटी, आई थिंक इट वाज 7/15 फ्रॉम व्हाट आई रिमेंबर। 8/15 एक ऑप्शन था, बट आई थिंक 7/15 was the answer. Anyway, correct. Yes. So, Anik, MDI. So, people who would have heard about MDI last year, you would know that it was a case that was similar to that one, जहाँ पे मतलब ज़्यादा लोगों को बुला लिया, and now they're offering either deferred admission or they are offering an admission at a sister campus, right? So that was basically one set that was there. Another set was on mining in restricted areas. So people who would have maybe not last year, but उसके पहले भी अगर देखते हो तो the all the Adani and Australian Great Barrier Reef and coral reefs and all. That was one of the things that you would have thought of maybe if you would have looked at that particular thing. Then in terms of another set that was there, there was one set which was based on a supermarket or a store that is present in a gated community, which is again something that many of you would have experienced, right? People who stay in gated communities, you might have seen these kind of stores being present there. And in a lot of situations, it so happens that you prefer going out and buying something instead of buying it at that store. So Blinkit and Kirana Wala, again, that was another set that was there. Poem ka answer, I'll come to it, Akhil. I'll come to VRC after I'm done with DM. So that was another set that was there. There was a set on hospital and the cafeteria bit, wherein there is a pharmacy, there's a cafeteria, there is a lab, everything is there. And now the hospital wants to undergo renovation and they want to sort of scale up operations or transform their operations. That's it. तो वो था, तो how would you look at that particular thing? That was again something that I thought was manageable if you looked at it, right? ये सब चीजें थी. Then again, in terms of the concert and the ticketing that exists, right? So ticketing practices. मैंने बोला था 40,000, मैंने बोला था 50,000 बेचूंगा, but I ended up selling 40,000. There's an agency involved. Again, something that happened recently. So that was one thing that was there. Then in the next set that I remember was the one जहाँ पे मतलब all right, yeah, trainers and juniors, yes. So induction programs जो होते हैं generally ragging, borderline ragging, so to say. You get into an organization and then they make you work super hard for the first few days, and then they tell you that it's a prank, right? Homer Simpson. So that was again another one that was there. Manageable sets. See, I will not say that all sets were easy or all questions were on the easier side, but थोड़ा सा rational. I see. Honestly, even I am not very sure of what exactly was the answer to each and every question, right? So I don't think I have like utmost confidence when I'm talking about DM or VA, not because I'm not good at the subject, but because that is known to throw some really weird answers when the official keys come out. ठीक है. इसके लिए I'm not very confident about my answers, but DM के अंदर अगर देखेंगे, I think some of the sets were manageable. I think the Blinkit and local Kirana store or the gated community one, that was definitely manageable. Hospital set I thought was slightly more manageable because I have worked on a similar project during my internship. I had worked on something similar, so I could relate to it. That was something. Mining was something that I could relate to. Induction had really easy options, so usko manage karna बहुत difficult नहीं था. Question stems were fairly manageable in that particular thing, so that was what I would that was what I was looking at in this particular context. So ये 3 या 4 sets definitely बन जाते हैं. उसके बाद you could cobble together another few attempts and you could easily hit maybe 14 or 15 in DM. Again, as I said earlier as well, बहुत ज़्यादा ambitious होके बहुत aggressive होना DM के अंदर without understanding the context will lead to your downfall. In case you have attempted blindly just because you wanted a lot of attempts under your belt, वो नहीं करना था. I think people who selected the right sets, thought about it nicely, eliminated the answers, were reasonably confident about the last couple of options. These people might have done well. ठीक है. So अगर cutoff prediction, it will mostly remain the same, is what my understanding is. That 24 के हिसाब से same ही रहेगा. And again, to give you some context, again, ZAT 24 was possibly the toughest ZAT in recent years. तो 24 ZAT के आसपास ही 25 ZAT का cutoff होगा, is what I think. It was not a big surprise, or I don't think it will jump a lot higher. As in CAT 23 or 24 में जो हुआ, I don't think that will happen in terms of that. It's a very easy test to analyze, right? So all those mentors would have taken these tests to analyze this particular test. I think today is the easiest job that these people would have had, because nothing changed as such, right? I think it remained exactly the way it was last year. So what's up? So in terms of DM, I think 15-ish is what I think would have been possible. Coming to VARC, as some of my students were also rightly pointing out, यार VARC के अंदर ऐसे लगा कि सिर्फ RC ही है. In fact, I started doing the VRC section. When I started doing the VRC section, I attempted the first 8 questions, and उसके बाद मैं देख रहा हूँ RC ही चल रहा है, RC ही चल रहा है, and RC ही चलते जा रहा है. Right, so there were, I think, 5 RCs that were there, and each one of them was difficult to read. Maybe one on meritocracy was a manageable RC, is what I felt. But beyond that, सारे के सारे RCs काफी ज़्यादा difficult थे. They were long, all right, but length was not the problem. Comprehension was the problem. And I won't be surprised अगर RC के अंदर cutoff actually नीचे गिर जाए, right? Because there were no freebies. There were absolutely no freebies that were there. Yeah, Aditya Admi and Pankha wala poem, right? That was a fan that was there. I have always maintained one thing when it comes to poems, that ZAT के अंदर literal interpretation works best. But ये poem के अंदर मतलब क्या ही literal interpretation करोगे, right? So someone enters a room and the fan has to move faster to sort of overcome the awesomeness that this person has brought to the room. It was not exactly an easy poem to handle. I have marked some answers because I thought that the options were fairly manageable, right? But I think I'll discuss the poem once the official key is out. But I thought that the options were straightforward, to be very honest with all of you. So poem भले ही difficult था to understand and interpret, I thought that the options were fairly spread out. तो वो manage कर सकते थे. Right. In terms of surprises, there was one small surprise. It was sort of a funny slash cute surprise that was there. They put a cartoon in the test this time. So there is a cartoon wherein the person says that, or the dog is so happy to see me, and कितना easy life है, and how can he remain so calm and composed? How can he remain happy, right? And the dog is saying कि भाई मेरे पे कितना ज़्यादा burden है of making this person happy, right? So it was a fun thing. Of course, it had a deeper connotation, but it was a fun surprise that was there. Man and dog case वाला. So cartoon के अंदर I don't remember the options well, but मतलब वही है कि मतलब we don't really, we are not able to understand what others are thinking. It was mostly on that thing. अपने assumptions कुछ अलग होते हैं, and लोगों का actual thought process कुछ अलग होता है. So that on those lines. So the option was, I think, manageable. Uh, Otherwise, beyond that, अगर VA वाला part देखेंगे तो grammar, jumbled paragraph, that was more or less what happened in terms of VA, and some standalone questions that were the critical reasoning wale questions, inference based questions that were there. In terms of jumbled paragraphs, I think this was a good surprise this year because both the jumbled paragraphs questions were manageable. The options were nice and the paragraphs themselves were nice. Although that stuck to its tradition of starting the paragraph with an arbitrary statement, it was not exactly a paragraph formation question. It was essentially a sequential arrangement question. छोटा सा difference होता है. But that was what it looked like. I think the jumble paragraph questions were manageable. The grammar questions were on the difficult side, I would say, similar to what happened in previous ads as well. कहीं कहीं पे मतलब you think that this is obvious, right? But then it is not exactly something that is grammatically correct. So being obvious and being grammatically correct are two different things. So there were some statements that I was able to figure out were not right grammatically, but we use them so much in our everyday conversations that we might think that that is the right option. But the options there were helpful. The options were good, is what I thought, and that would have helped some people crack the grammar questions as well. So that was the whole idea about the VR section. The inference questions were again very difficult to read and interpret and answer. So I would not comment a lot on the interpretation, the inference-based questions that were there. But otherwise, RCs were difficult. You required 2, 3, 4 readings, and even then you might not have been sure of your answers. So that was what RCs looked like. In terms of the VA part, I think people would have prepared well, would have managed the VA part nicely. And in terms of the inference-based questions, एक दो questions यहाँ वहाँ से अगर stitch together कर दोगे, I think that was again possible. So as a whole अगर देखेंगे verbal के अंदर भी I think 14-15 attempts is what you can manage out of 26 questions. And उसके बाद if someone decided to gamble, someone decided to go slightly overboard and attempt it a bit more aggressively, that was also possible. but this is what I thought about the three sections. GK was GK, the way it is. Uh, fairly straightforward questions, contemporary questions that were there. Ding Liren and Gukesh happened basically. That was there. Armed Forces, CDC, that was there. Books and authors was there. People and awards, but then it was very easy for it to connect, right? So Ratan Tata, Manmohan Singh, and couple others I forgot. Right, both Dronacharya Award again, very manageable questions. Airlines, Indigo and India, if you were able to manage, then I think that would have been manageable. So I thought around 8 or 9 questions were doable in GK. You would have been able to answer those 8, 9 questions for sure, even being a casual reader. So I consider myself as a casual reader. I have not prepared for the GK section at all, but I was able to confidently mark answers to 9 questions out of 20. उसके बाद guess work तो किया ही था, तो देखते क्या होता है, ठीक है? Uh, okay, Indigo Singapore, yeah. So that was basically what it looked like, and otherwise. Yeah, otherwise, I think it was fine. How many marks for 99 percentile? Nancy, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. I think it should be around 34 to 35 marks. 35, I think, should be a good enough score for a 99 percentile. Typically, the response sheet comes out within 5 days or so. So by the next Friday or so, I'm expecting the response sheet to come out. Akhil, that's your answer, right? So around 10th is what I'm assuming the response sheet will come out. And if they intend to, they can release the response sheet even in the next couple of hours यार, मतलब कर सकते हैं, but ठीक है, मतलब धीरे धीरे काम चलता है यहाँ पे, तो आई थिंक फ्राइडे तक आ जाना चाहिए. Quant का sectional cutoff, Aniket, see sectional cutoff, if I'm looking at a 90th percentile, I think around 8.59 marks max is what I'm looking at. I don't think 90 percentile should go into double digits quant के अंदर, right? And in terms of the number of attempts, again, people who are joining us a bit late. The number of attempts, if I'm to talk about it, quant के अंदर I think around 16 attempts should be manageable. DM के अंदर around 14, 15 attempts. And same thing in VRs as well, 14-ish, 15-ish attempts. Overall, 45 attempts, if you have an accuracy of 80%. I think you should be somewhere around the 97, 98 percentile. That's what I'm thinking is going to happen. MACET का कोर्स आने वाला है, नेक्स्ट मंडे से स्टार्ट हो रहा है, तो विद इन द नेक्स्ट कपल ऑफ डेज यू शुड बी एबल टू सी सम नोटिफिकेशन फ्रॉम माय साइड. सो दैट इज गोइंग टू स्टार्ट नेक्स्ट वीक, ठीक है? VALR का क्या रेंज है? आदित्य, अगेन आई एम थिंकिंग अराउंड 14-15 अटेम्प्ट पकड़ के चल लो. Accuracy of around 80%, so 11ish correct answers, 3 or 4 incorrect answers, and some to one or 0.75 marks, 0.7, 0.8 marks that you might lose because of unattempted questions. That is what I think is going to happen. GK cutoff for XLR है जमशेदपुर कुछ होता नहीं है साहिल, so the GK का कुछ cutoff नहीं होता. They will just look at it, and from what I have understood or what I have figured out over the last many years is, unless there is something exceptionally good or exceptionally poor in your GK section, you will not get grilled. So mostly लोग निकल जाते हैं, बिल्कुल GK ज़्यादा डिस्कस होता नहीं है, so don't worry about it. ठीक है? Yeah, CMAT next now. Of course, to start preparing for the next question, the next set, next test rather, and I think you should be fine. Okay. I'll try to put a score versus cutoff grid later in the day. So I'll try to put it on the community tab and also on the Telegram channel that is there. So do stay tuned on the channel. I'll be sharing the cutoff bit that is going to um, that I'm going to float, right? तो ये सारी चीजें होंगी. And one interesting conversation that I had at my center, someone asked me that there is some college is asking you to sort of freeze your admission, या फिर बोल रहे कि तुम्हारा admission हो गया है, या फिर call आया हुआ है, they are running behind you. So just remember one thing. I'll do a detailed video on this a bit later, but just understand one thing: if the college is more desperate than you to get you on board, you might want to avoid it. Okay, so that is one thing that I'm talking about. And purely in terms of what to expect, if you have scored maybe around the 70, 75, less than 75 percentile at the CAT, you might want to consider some options that are running behind you at this point in time if you don't intend to take the CAT again. But उसके ऊपर अगर score है तो, and if you wish to take it another, if you wish to give another shot at it, I don't think you should settle for colleges जो तुम्हारे पीछे भाग रहे हैं. So that is where I will close this discussion. ठीक है? And law question का answer, Mohammed, I think it was 2, -3/4 and 2, from what I remember. ऐसे कुछ तो था. ठीक है. So that was what I thought was the answer. XLRI for private equity, Aditya, it's good. It's as good a college as any. So PE, VC, iBanking, कॉफिन जो भी मतलब any finance role looking at, I think you should be fine. ठीक है. All right, score for 95 percentile. Okay, butterfly and others who have asked course percentile, I'll put a nice grid a bit later. It's going to be mostly similar to ZAT 24 का grade. So अगर uh, if you are like if you want a quick answer, then you can refer to the 40 days to ZAT वाला video. उसके अंदर I have put a detailed grid of score versus percentile. Roughly वही numbers होंगे. I'll discuss it with a few more people and see if my opinions change a bit, and then I'll come up with a revised grid for all of you. ठीक है? चलो. So I hope all of you did well and all of you had fun attempting the test. I know it was a very lengthy, boring kind of a test, and people who would have started with verbal might have actually slept off in the afternoon, especially if you had had a nice lunch, right? So but that is what happens with this right? It's an attritional test at the end of the day. Okay, chalo. So on that note, I'll close this. I'll come up with the versus percentile bit in a while. So make sure that you're tuned into this channel and wish you the best for the next test, be it CMAT, be it MyCat, or be it CET, whichever you're taking. Okay, chalo. So I'll close the session now. Thank you everyone for turning up and wish you all the best for the result. Once the response sheet comes out, we'll have more clarity in terms of what the scores and percentiles might look at. So yeah, wish you all the best again for the season and I'll see you again in the next video.